Okay guys, so the first thing that you actually need to remember is that the word bias is a noun. And if you think back to when you were in primary school and then you were being taught the difference between a noun, a verb and an adjective, a noun is a thing. So in the case of bias, the way that you use that word is as a noun. As you can see being written on the screen at the moment, my bias towards Converse shoes is seen in the fact that I own 25 pairs. By owning 25 pairs, it shows to you that I think Converse shoes are pretty awesome. On the other hand, however, the word biased is completely different. By adding the ed on the end of the word, it changes it into an adjective, and an adjective is a describing word. So, what biased does is explain how a source is one-sided. So therefore, she was biased towards Converse shoes because she didn't own any other brands. That suggests that the person who doesn't own any other brands is in fact the description of being biased. I know that's a little bit confusing, and it does get a little bit confusing after a while, but if you don't use the words in the right context, you actually end up sounding not so clever. Right? So remember, something has bias, something shows bias. Both of those are nouns, using the word bias as nouns. When you add the ed on the end of it, it's the describing. So something is biased or something was biased. Okay guys, so bias can be shown in different pieces of writing depending on the type of language that's used in order to present one idea or another. What I'm going to do is show you two pieces of writing about a guy called Henry VIII. This is the one who had all of the wives. He was the King of England, and in some cases he was seen as being really fantastic and lovely, especially when he was young, and then as he got older people seemed to not like him quite so much anymore. So the first piece of writing that's here is a view of an Italian diplomat, someone who actually came to England in order to visit the king, and probably in order to be able to get the king on side with the Italian government. Because of that, the guy who was writing about Henry VIII in this respect probably wasn't trying to show anything bad about him and instead promote him in a positive light. So in this case, he has described him with some very interesting terms. He is the handsomest guy I've ever set my eyes on, above the usual height, with an extremely fine calf to his leg, because apparently it's important for a king to have an extremely fine calf to his leg. His complexion is very fair and bright, which suggests that he's actually doesn't look ill or sick at all. He has a round face, so very beautiful that would become a pretty woman, which suggests that he has a very beautiful face which is as pretty as a woman's. His throat being rather long and thick, apparently that's also a good thing. He will enter his 25th year in the month after next. Now that's not really important, it's just a fact, but they're telling you that he speaks French, English and Latin and a little Italian, which actually says that for such a young man he's actually quite learned, and that he's read a lot. He plays well on the lute and harpsichord, sings from the book on sight, and draws the bow with the greater strength than any man in England. Now that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but this guy actually just wanted to present Henry VIII as a very positive, beautiful, good-looking man. He probably didn't want Henry VIII offside, because if he did, then his government wouldn't appreciate him. On the other hand, however, is this description of Henry VIII that has been given by a historian later. So this one was in 2009. Instead of being known for the ease of his companionship and gentle graciousness, the older Henry was reputed to be irritable, capricious, and capable of great cruelty. None of those things are positive. The king was irritated, and his ministers were at a loss to account for it. Others commented on his mercurial unpredictability. Again, that's a negative word. People with credit say he's often of a different opinion in the morning than after dinner. This suggests that he is easy to change his mind about something. His volatile moods are a source of anxiety for his counsellors, which actually tells you that he can be quite brutal and violent towards other people. He was violent with his erstwhile closest confidant and chief minister Cromwell twice a week, hitting him well about the pate, which suggests that Henry actually was physically violent towards people who he considered both a friend and someone he confided in. By 1540, Charles G. Someone, who was a French ambassador, would describe Henry VIII as a fearful, inconsistent, and so covetous that all the riches in the world could not satisfy him. None of those words are actually positive at all. Henry's tendency towards the cruel dispatching of those who'd wronged him, including those very close to him, reached its apogee in his last decade. Henry had become misanthropic, suspicious, and a cruel king, and his subjects began discreetly, for such words were illegal, to call him a tyrant. This word tyrant is reminiscent of someone like Hitler or Mussolini, someone who's running a country with no one to stop them. So this is biased against Henry because of all the emotive language that they're using to show how horrible he was, whereas this one is biased towards Henry, showing you all of the positive things about him.